Maybe you've been feeling more exhausted, overwhelmed, or frustrated with repeating the same patterns even though you know better. This Scorpio new moon happening on November 20th is asking, where have you forgotten your sovereignty because of survival mechanisms? Where have you confused your coping mechanisms with your true power? And what chains are you ready to let go of that you've held on to simply because they're familiar? This Scorpio new moon is happening in the human design gate 14, the power of skills, showing you where the old structures can't hold the new energy anymore. This pattern that you're stuck in is no longer sustainable, and you know this. If you've been avoiding that truth, or if you've been avoiding a truth, this new moon asks you to have the courage to face it and to take responsibility over what needs to be done to truly transmute it. Scorpio doesn't just create endings, it exposes the endings that have already begun, and it's very common in those times for there to be something I call, or that we call, an extinction burst, when something that is dying gets louder before it dies. But this new moon's asking for this clean cut, and I just want to let you know right off the bat that I'm feeling a little spicy today. Okay. I feel like this new moon energy is so transformative. It's so big that it requires a little bit of spice. And this is a part of myself that I have felt punished for a lot. In my recent video, I talked a lot about how the energies right now are asking us to revisit the past in order to reclaim old parts of ourselves that we've lost in childhood in order to survive. It's like your childhood self has left you something, a thread of joy that you abandoned to survive. You're moving forward at a fast rate, but you're taking a piece of you that you left behind a long time ago. One of the words that I heard around me a lot when I was younger is zabun deraz, which is a Farsi word that literally translates to long tongue. I was sassy. I was direct, Gemini sun, Sag moon. And when I was little, at first it was cute, right? People were like, oh, Jazz, she just says the darnest things. And then as you start getting older, you start saying things that make people uncomfortable, and they don't like that. People in authority don't like that. And so what happened was I had to abandon that part of myself in order to survive, to earn love and acceptance through compliance and politeness and self-sacrifice. But that part of me really never left. I lost this spark that was so powerful and made me uniquely who I was, right? Sensitive but sassy at the same time. And the interesting thing is I actually discovered this part of myself about 4 years ago. It's actually something that I do with my clients. Somatic parts work or somatic shadow work is so, so important, I believe, when you're doing this work, especially with shadow work. It's really easy to get lost in the obsessiveness of like figuring out the shadows, and not rooting them through the body and having that anchor, which is really helpful. Why it's helpful to do it with somebody, but eventually you want to be able to have that anchor in yourself, right? And that's what I teach people over time. But I discovered this part of me 4 years ago, and while I saw her importance, there were other parts that were really screaming for my attention a little bit more. And so 4 years later, what I discovered 4 years ago is now starting to come up. And I think this is so important to talk about, especially when we have the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. There's a lot of trusting the unknown right now, right? We're in this void between worlds. I've talked about that extensively. And we're releasing old Virgoan tendencies to understand, to plan, to know what the next step is, understand it, right? Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Nept- uh, uh, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, faith in the unknown, right? So this is what we're being called to do as a collective. So just a little note here that sometimes what you learn today may take years for you to fully understand, and that's okay, right? This is why we have to learn to love this process, even if it's painful, and why I talk so much about pain, because it's such a huge part of this. So I've decided, as a part of reclaiming my rhythm during this Mercury retrograde, this is a part of my rhythm that I'm reclaiming, is this sassy part of myself, this directness, this part of me that was never unkind to hurt people, but saw truth and told it the way that it was. I'm doing, for Mercury retrograde, I do something called a Mercury retrograde rewire, where I'm rewiring a theme around what that Mercury retrograde is going through. So this time I called it reclaiming rhythm. And I talk more about it on my Substack, so make sure you join my Substack if you're interested in that. I'll have the link in the description down below. But that's a huge part of what I'm reclaiming. And so I want to ask you, what about your past are you reclaiming? Some of you guys commented on my last video, but if you didn't, I'd love to invite you to talk about it here, because maybe yours wasn't speech. Maybe it was something different. Maybe it was a hobby. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was a different way of being that you lost, but now you're feeling stuck and overwhelmed, and you're grasping for the new. You're grasping for, okay, so what is happening out there? But this old thing that's trying to come through you is actually where the answer lies, and that can only be found when we go inward, when we allow rest for the silence and for the insights to come through us. I see it in real time how difficult it is for us to be faced with patterns that we logically understand, but our bodies and our nervous systems and our limbic systems, right, try to grasp onto. And that extinction burst that I talked about, this phenomenon that, like, when something is dying, it actually gets worse, happens in real time. And, there's no shame in it, because this is how our bodies are designed to create safety, right? This is amazing protective measures. And the whole point of shadow work is to create a healthy enough ego so that it's not overtaken by the shadow, but it also is not bulldozing the shadow, right? It's this balance that needs to occur, and that takes time and consistency. But over time, a lot of times in my sessions, like I said, I become the anchor, but over time, with your decision and your responsibility, right? It's your choice, your responsibility. I can only do so much. You can become your own anchor through this, right? And that's the beauty of this process. But the integrity of not enabling people is so powerful to me. And this is coming up with Scorpio, because it's like, do you have the ability to stay when you see something? Because, obviously when I point out patterns, it doesn't mean they're right, but this full moon, or I'm sorry, this new moon, it feels like a full moon because there's more power behind it. This new moon is really asking you, do you have the courage to look at the patterns that are holding you back and stop being your biggest enabler? Stop compromising. The shadow of gate 14 is compromise. We'll read a little bit about that. You're compromising with yourself, and it's creating stuckness in yourself. You need more responsibility. You need to take radical responsibility. That's 2 words when people ask me the shortest way of how did you heal your autoimmune? How did you heal your chronic pain? How did you transform your 7-year relationship? How did you leave your pharmacist career with no plan? Radical responsibility. Knowing that nobody was going to come to save me, that all the dreams that I had would never come to fruition if I didn't take the first step. Being radically honest with yourself and others right now is absolutely called for. It is the loving act that this lunation calls for. I had a friend who is a nurse practitioner, and she told me that when she had clients come in, a lot of times they would want antibiotics for a viral infection. Like, they just didn't believe her when she said, no, it's a viral infection. And she said, you know what, I just eventually give in and I give it to them because, and this is very, very common. I'll just tell you, as someone who worked in the medical field, very, very common for providers of all types to just give it because they just want the person off their case, and the system really rewards this because it's like they don't give you time for patience, right? And so you have to get them out of there. And I remember I looked at her when she told me that, and I was like, I would rather call the cops on that person than give them something that I knew would harm them. And when we enable ourselves, when we compromise with ourselves, when we do this with other people in our lives, we think we're being nice, but we're really hurting them in the long run, right? Antibiotics have horrific side effects. You know, they should be used with caution when absolutely necessary, not just because you feel like you have a cold or something when someone's telling you it's just viral, right? So just an example of that, okay? Now let's get into the transits and how these are echoing and mirroring these themes that are coming up. As I showed you guys before, you know, we're breaking chains right now, and this is big stuff. Two major arcanas, and when I asked what is the advice that to give, I got the star. So three major arcanas, ending old patterns that have kept you stuck, and on the other side of this is a new vision. This is huge. This new moon feels very consequential to me. Very consequential. As we're looking at this lunation November 20th, if you have anything around 25 to 29 degrees of the fixed signs, Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, Aquarius. I always forget the fourth one. You're going to be feeling this the most, right? Look at this. Oh, let me change that color. It's a little too similar. Let's just do black. Look at this. That's a lot of Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio, detriment. Mercury in Scorpio, retrograde. Sun in Scorpio, Lilith in Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio as well is debilitated here. So Venus and the moon, our emotions, our femininity with Lilith here as well, the feminine aspects of ourselves, whether we're women or male, are struggling a little bit. The emotions are all over the place. And there's a lot of intensity. There could be a lot of, like I said, overwhelm, especially because Uranus is opposing all of this. Uranus and Taurus at the 29th degree of Taurus, the anaretic karmic degree of Taurus, fated, unstable degree. It's opposing this. This is a disruptor new moon. You are breaking the chains. There is no other way. You have to feel the discomfort to find the freedom. You have to feel the discomfort to find the freedom. You cannot avoid here. Now, this is sitting in this grand trine, right? Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune. We've talked about this. I have a video about it, and I've talked about it multiple other times. We do have this grand trine, beautiful. Grand trines can be lazy. It can make us lazy. It's like integration's happening in the background, but it can make us like I'm just gonna like deal with it, because trines don't add friction. Now we'll talk about another part that's adding a lot of friction. This opposition sure is adding friction, right? Like, crap, I gotta look at this. I can't stay the same anymore. Something's jolting me awake. This is a revolution in so many ways, in your relationships, in your values, in money, in your sense of identity and life force energy. We'll talk about that. Your clarity, your thoughts, right? This is a time to be really watching our thoughts and how we speak to other people, not because we're afraid, but because, you know, we also don't want to abandon other parts of myself. This is something that comes up a lot too, is like, you know, when we have oppositions, we tend to like oscillate, like, okay, shake, awake, like, screw you, relationship, screw you, emotions, screw you, everyone. And then this part of us feels neglected because Scorpio is about intimacy and vulnerability and connection. And you're just out here like, I'm just going to do all these things. We have to find a balance, right? We have to be able to find a balance. So I honestly think because Mercury's retrograde, like, yeah, obviously there are going to be like some miscommunications, probably all of the natural Mercury retrograde things, but a lot of this might be internal, a lot of overthinking what's asking to be felt. I could talk about this forever. Now, Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto. Pluto is relatively inactive here, but Mars is not. Mars is sitting at 11 degrees of Scorpio. So if you have anything around 11 degrees of Scorpio, give or take a few degrees, you're probably feeling like lit up, you know? Even any fixed signs as well, because it's hitting you directly. Mars is squaring the nodes, squaring Pisces, North Node, squaring the South Node in Virgo. So everything I said earlier about the nodes, Mars is saying, how will you use your action, assertion, will to move towards your evolution and get rid of the old patterns, right? The South Node is like our karmic comfort zone. How are you going to get out of there so you can move towards your evolutionary path right now? And it's going to feel super foggy. That's the thing. The more confused you are, the more you're probably on your path. If you're super, super certain right now, you're probably clinging to old patterns. So Mars is about right use of will, cutting out. Mars is also severing, cutting out these old patterns. What is no longer helping you? This is about conflict as well. How do you deal with conflict? How is that coming up in old ways where you try to cling to control versus allow room for compassion and hold space for other people and their sovereignty? If you want sovereignty, you have to be willing to give it to others. So all these transits, I love talking about this. One of the things that comes up a lot in the astrology world is that we cling to transits for control, right? South Node in Virgo. And in my workshop that's coming out, it's happening December 6th at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I will be releasing all the sales and stuff soon. I will send it to my mailing list and my Substack first, so make sure you're on those. I have links for both of those in the description. But I will be talking about this. And I actually redid the workbook to add more about transits and how to work with them because I see it as such a place of struggle for so many people in astrology. To be honest with you guys, I've actually thought of not even doing astrology anymore because it's that hard sometimes to think about these energies and how much people cling to them. And in my work, it's very secondary. It's very, very secondary. I can see back to that enabling thing. It's so easy for me to just look at people and say, oh, you asked me, well, what's this? And I can just tell you, oh, it's this. Oh, it's this. But I know that I'd be enabling you. And my sun is conjunct Aldebaran, which is one of the Persian royal stars that is ruled by Saint Michael. Integrity is the foundation of everything I do. If I know it's going to hurt you, if I know you have a viral infection and you're asking for antibiotics, I cannot give you the antibiotics. So in my workshop, Co-Creating the Cosmos, I'm going to talk about this more in depth. And I'm also going to give you the astrology and human design placements that you can help to realign with your rhythm so that you're co-creating with the cosmos and not feeling like they're happening to you or that you need to look at them to tell you what to do or what not to do, okay? Because I will tell you, I do use astrological timing a lot, but it's not the first thing I go to, okay? So we'll talk all about that. If you're interested, that'll be coming up soon, okay? Now, I want to briefly talk about the gene key and the human design here, because this is adding a huge layer that I think is very important. There we go. This is happening in gate 14. The sun is in gate 14, the moon and Mercury all in gate 14. Gate 14 is the gate of power skills. Or the gate of prosperity as well. And Venus is in Scorpio, but it's in a different gate, which is gate 1, which is gate of self-expression and creativity. It's the most creative gate out of all the gates. Human design, if you're not familiar, is a synthesis of astrology and a bunch of other systems. I've talked about it before. And then gate 14, I know it's kind of blurry. Gate 14 sits in the sacral center of the life force energy. So when I talked about Mars being squaring the nodes, asking you, will you use your will? It's about right use of will and life force and power. And in this gate, it becomes a lot about work and the work that you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to read just briefly from Richard Rudd. This is the Gene Key book. Gene Keys is an offshoot of Human Design. This book is amazing. It's in my book list in my description as well. The shadow of Gene Key 14 or Gate 14 is compromise. The gift is competence. The 14th hexagram is usually translated to possession in great measure. It's a symbol of wealth, health, and prosperity, which are all themes linked to good fortune as well as hard work. This gene key really concerned the way in which humans work. The shadow, compromise, is the byproduct of living without a sense of personal freedom. Remember, I mentioned sovereignty? Sovereignty is having self-contained power and freedom, right? Autonomy. He says it implies a lack of imagination and an inability to believe in the power of your own uniqueness and individuality. And a lot of this, once again, like not shaming ourselves, because my Zabunderaz was something that was a part of my uniqueness and individuality that I had to give up to survive. And that's, there's no shame in that. Wherever you compromise, you are settling for second best, and you can never fully enjoy what you do in life. If you do not enjoy it, you can never excel in it. Enjoyment and enthusiasm are the fuel in the turbine that drives you to excel. In my last video, I did like a cold reading. I just picked a gene key, and it was a gene key that has to do with enthusiasm. So this is coming up a lot, and about genius. And this gene key is about genius too, and how everyone's born with genius, but it's like beaten out of us, metaphorically or literally, And he says, finally, compromise cannot bring you prosperity because it makes you a follower rather than a creator. True prosperity emerges from doing what we are here to do rather than being simply another cog in a collective machine. Prosperity is the byproduct of individual creative endeavor and requires a sustained sense of empowered direction. The more one compromises in life, the more powerless one feels to escape. Very, very important for all of us, especially generators and manifesting generators, to do work that they love. If you don't know what your type is, I have a free chart calculator on my website. Link is in the description. Lots of links in the description. Always look in the description. There's a ton there. But for generators and manifesting generators, whenever I hear them say like, oh, I don't want to work, I just wish I could win the lottery and not work, I'm like, that's a sign to me that you're not using your life force energy in a way that sustains you truly. And here, especially because Venus is in Scorpio in gate 1 about creativity, and Scorpio has a lot to do with the exchange of emotions and money, right? It rules the 8th house naturally. We have to talk a little bit about money, and I don't want to get super deep into this. If you guys want me to talk more about money, let me know in the comments below, because I have a lot to say about money. I've gone through a lot of money shadows. I came to America with my family with nothing. And on top of that, I'm a woman of color, right? So like, obviously I have so many privileges that many others don't have, but I also am not as privileged as a lot of other people. And for me, prosperity in a lot of ways was always tied to money, and it felt really hard when I was a pharmacist. It felt very difficult. And when I left my job, I was like, okay, like I'm going to go through a period of uncertainty with money because I didn't have a plan. Sagittarius moon, I was like, okay, we're just going to do this. Gave my boss 3 days notice. He was totally cool with that. He was totally cool with that. He was awesome. And I was like, all right, I'm going to live off my savings for a while. Never dipped into my savings. And I say this because I now understand the power of this, of doing something that you love, that fulfills you. There is an endless supply of prosperity. There is an endless supply of creativity and value that you can offer the world, which then you can exchange for money. And money is a place that we have a lot of issues with in the spiritual world because we either demonize it, right? Money is the root of all evil. We see people with money abuse power and we say, well, money sucks and I don't even really want it. But then we also simultaneously are like, man, I wish I could afford this, or, it's so hard not having this money, or like, oh, I would do this, but I can't afford it. So these are like the uncomfortable truths that we have to face, right? The shadows that we have around money. And then also we have a lot of people in the spiritual field who are like obsessed with money, right? Like, oh, I just wish I won the lottery. Oh, I wish I won $1 million. But how many people win the lottery and go bankrupt, right? Because as I always say, they do not have the capacity to hold what it is that they are wanting in money. They do not have the capacity. That's why I talk about capacity so much. When you don't have capacity, you get crushed by it. So in these times of preparation, you are preparing to be able to hold this new thing that's coming to you. And you have to trust that. You have to trust that. So this is less about productivity, as I said, and about being more productive with the sacral. That's often what comes up is like, oh, we need to do more, work more, work more. It's about alignment in work. That is what creates prosperity. And it's not about doing it for the money. If you're doing it for the money, then that's an incorrect use of that life force energy. You're doing it to fuel your joy and to create value in the world. And one of the biggest things about this in the spiritual world, guys, I could talk about money forever. I love, like I said, I've gone through a lot of shadow work with money, and I've learned so much about it. So if you guys want more, please tell me, because I talk a lot about pain. I love talking about love, and I love talking about money. One of the things with money is like because we are sensitive people, you're probably like me, you're probably very sensitive. You probably feel how and see how so much of the world struggles and how they don't have their basic necessities. I'm someone who's volunteered and donated money since I was really young, and I continue to do it. 10% of my initial readings go to charities. Right now, they're going to an animal rescue in Iran. And at some point, we have to realize that we ourselves, when we claim our own true power, we invite, and I want to read this from Richard Rudd, we invite people into that frequency. We are all a part of the collective unconscious. So yes, we will naturally have more pull towards people who are around us, but energy transcends time and space. And when you are claiming your power and you are bringing value into the world, you are and really stepping into your sovereignty, you are inviting other people to do the same thing. And if that makes them uncomfortable, that's not your responsibility, right? It's like me as a kid thinking if I said what I saw, I made them uncomfortable. It was my responsibility. So I said, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to stay small. I'm not going to achieve my dreams. I'm not going to say what I want to say because I don't want to make them uncomfortable. This is what Richard Rudd says about the gift of the 14th gene key, which is competence. Once you've attained the gift frequency, the tendency is for consciousness to keep expanding. Competence creates a powerful magnetic field that not only draws in the right support, but also has the ability to magnetize material wealth. This is the origin of many folk sayings about money and wealth. For example, it takes wealth to become wealthy, or wealth begets wealth. Prosperity is an infectious energy field that grows exponentially as long as it is used in the service of empowerment. Competence is unafraid of success and power and radiates confidence and assuredness wherever it goes. It is a force field that naturally creates prosperity. It cannot do otherwise because it has so much creative power within it. It is only to find the right outlet in the world. I think that a lot of us sensitives think that because we see so much misuse of power out in the world and money, that we become afraid of it. But what is happening is, once again, this is about right use of energy. Mars squaring the nodes. You don't have to use material wealth. You don't have to use power to hurt. You can use it to empower and to help other people. So the more that you play small, the more that you're not helping anybody. It's not just about you. It's about how you can help the collective when you break your own chains, how you can empower them when you learn to break your own chains. So let me ask you this. What's draining you? What empowers you? What pulls your life force forward? What brings you joy? Where are you done compromising yourself? How many? I'm holding up numbers and they're wrong. I don't know what I'm at right now. And yeah, where are you ready to claim your competence and your true power? Because something that you've been carrying for a long time is losing its grip and it's asking you to stop playing small. So say the things you've been, wanting to say, close what's done, stop giving your power away to anything that drains you, and start investing. Start investing in the life that you want to create. The world opens when you stop feeding the pattern that's been closing you. You already know what needs to shift. This new moon is going to give you the courage to act on it. In 6 months, when this culminates in a full moon, it's going to be epic if you do the work. Quick reminder before we close, I'll be opening up registration soon for that Co-Creating the Cosmos, where you will learn how to reclaim your rhythm with the cosmos rather than against them or trying to control them in order to control your life. So join my mailing list and Substack for that. And just one last message before we go. What is it that the collective who's watching this needs right now? The Three of Swords reversed. An ending of pain, the end of a relationship with pain, the end of a relationship to suffering, a new emergence of relationship to pain and suffering. I'll have a video out about that soon, actually. So that perfect. And, I already have a video, Illness as Initiation, talking about pain, but I actually have another video that I'm putting out about this soon. But this new moon is the end of something that was painful. Wow. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to my Zabunderaz. I'll see you next time.